Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to common sense, to sanity. It's another one of those days where it's really going to be put to the test. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. And a special thank you to Undivided subscribers. If you're not a subscriber to the show already, we can't do the show without subscribers. So sign up. You can go to undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and there are options there for you to support the show for as little as $5 a month. Not even going to tease today. I'm just going to dive right in because, frankly, almost the entire hour of the show today is going to be one long rant about the disregard that some politicians have in Seattle for not only the rule of law, but for the sanctity of life, the disdain they seem to have for human life. And I will be honest, I have on a lot of occasions felt like I should just give up on downtown, that whoever the people of Seattle vote for, that's clearly what they want. But we all know, those of us with common sense who can think rationally, we know that we can't write Seattle off. Because we know that what happens in Seattle finds its way to other areas of our state. What happens to Seattle, the policies pushed in Seattle, find their way and their tentacles into what happens in state government. We've seen that. We've seen how progressive the Democratic majority has become in Olympia, and that some of the ideas that first rear their ugly head in Seattle eventually make their way down to the state capitol. And we have a huge election in Seattle this year, 7 of 9 Seattle City Council seats. And there's this part of me that wants to hope that Seattle voters have had enough, that they see how far things have fallen. And then there's this other part of me that keeps being reminded of all the times I thought that, only to be deeply disappointed. I am on the verge right now of losing hope. And I say that completely absent hyperbole, because I just see what happened in the Seattle City Council yesterday, and I think that sanity must have gone out the window somewhere. So we know it is not in dispute that there is a drug crisis in the city of Seattle, and frankly across Washington state, but particularly when we talk about open air, blatant drug use, drug selling, when we talk about the human suffering and destruction that results from substance abuse, we see it playing out every single day on the streets of Seattle, in the heart of Seattle, in the tourist zones of Seattle. Again, this is not in dispute. I would challenge you, if you walk down 3rd Avenue today, I bet you'll see someone overdosing on drugs, because it's almost hard to miss. So back in April, while Washington state lawmakers were going back and forth on, do we pass a law to make sure that drug possession remains a crime in Washington state? During that time, you had cities across the state and counties who were saying, okay, if the state doesn't do it, we have to. We have to have our own laws on the books that we can enforce in case state lawmakers fail, and starting July 1st, drugs are de facto legalized. So even in Seattle, thank God there are a couple common sense politicians, Ann Davison, the Seattle city attorney, and 2 other members of the city council. They came forward and said, hey, we have to step up. We have to have an ordinance on the books that makes drug possession and open air drug use a crime. Here's Ann Davison back in April.
The drug abuse epidemic is a humanitarian crisis that deserves just as much urgency as we gave to the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, every day, people on our streets are dying of overdose and drug-related harm. It's time to face the facts. What we've been doing these past years isn't working. Year over year, overdose deaths rose by 72%. And no neighborhood has been untouched by the scourge of the drug abuse epidemic.
And as she said, again, common sense. We have to face the facts. What we've been doing hasn't been working. What we've been doing, you cannot look at what's happening on the streets of Seattle and say, yeah, what we've been doing for the past 10 years hasn't been working. And let's be clear. There has been essentially de facto drug legalization in Seattle for a decade. I remember when I first started as a journalist in Seattle 13 years ago, doing ride-alongs with the Seattle Police Department, rolling down alleyways where they would see someone smoking something out of a pipe and they would say, the city attorney at the time, Pete Holmes, he's not going to prosecute that anyway, so we're not going to arrest. So de facto drug legalization has been the reality in Seattle for a long time. And what Ann Davison was saying in April is that cannot be the reality any longer. We have seen the implications of that. We have seen the impacts of that. So she proposed a piece of common sense legislation to make sure that in Seattle there is an ordinance on the books that says you cannot use drugs in public. You cannot possess illegal drugs. And yesterday, the Seattle City Council voted on it. Now, going into the vote, there was a belief that it would shake out 5-4 and that it would pass. That was the belief going into it. That was the prevailing wisdom of the vote count. And certainly we knew that there were going to be some council members who were opposed to it. You know, Councilwoman Tammy Morales, who's running for re-election, by the way, just put a pin in that because we're going to bring that back up later on. Councilwoman Tammy Morales, who represents the area around South Seattle, Chinatown International District. She's essentially Shama Sawant light. I think she's more of a socialist than she is a progressive. She voted against this yesterday, and her argument is that it would resurrect a failed war on drugs. Here she is.
This bill is not intended to solve substance use disorder. It is not intended to provide treatment to people. It is not intended, even if encouraged, to support pretrial diversion. It is not intended to mitigate the racial disproportionality that always comes when arresting people is made easier. The sole intent then is to put poor people in jail, most of whom will be Black and brown, and then let them out and ensure that they have a record that follows them forever and makes it harder to get a job or get housing. I still hear neighbors talking in South Seattle about the trauma caused by the Weed and Seed program, another effort to target users and round them up, especially in communities of color. Let's be very clear that what hangs in the balance today is whether we will vote to put Black and brown people in jail.
That's what hangs in the balance today. That's what she thinks hangs in the balance today. That's what she believes in a city like Seattle. The only possible rationale for proposing an ordinance to make public drug use a crime, the only possible rationale is because you want to put Black and brown people in jail. For the love of God. We're going to get to you, Tammy Morales, coming up in a little bit. So, not a surprise she votes against it. Shama Sawant votes against it. Teresa Mosqueda votes against it. Lisa Herbold, who, that woman cannot leave the Seattle City Council fast enough. Thank God she's not running for re-election, but I wish there were a way to get her out of office sooner. She votes against it. And then Andrew freaking Lewis. Andrew freaking Lewis, the councilman for downtown Seattle, the area most impacted by the substance abuse crisis, Andrew freaking Lewis. Prevailing wisdom going into the evening was that he was going to vote in favor of it. He was going to be the deciding vote. A vote for common sense, a vote for sanity, a vote for downtown, a vote to save his city, a vote to save people's lives. Well, here's Andrew freaking Lewis yesterday in the Seattle City Council chambers.
I came out here on the dais today fully prepared to vote for this measure because I do think it is generally proper that we reconcile our SMC to the state law. But with the ending of community court, without any additional process, I just can't do it today. I just can't.
No, you can. You can do it today. You didn't want to do it. And don't be confused. Don't be confused. Don't believe that Andrew Lewis suddenly changed his vote out of some impassioned, deep belief that what he was doing was the right thing. No, Andrew Lewis, the coward that he is, changed his vote because a bunch of Shama Sawant socialist alternative supporters showed up in council chambers and yelled and screamed and whined. And that's what they do. Those are the only people who can show up at Seattle City Hall in the middle of the day on a weekday. And Andrew Lewis and others on the council believe that that is reflective of what the populace in Seattle thinks. Whoever shows up in front of them and shouts the loudest, and it's not just me saying that, it's not just me who believes that. Shama Sawant herself, after it became clear that Andrew Lewis was going to be suddenly a no vote, Shama Sawant herself was giddy about it and took responsibility for it, took credit for it, and gave credit to her followers in the crowd.
I'll tell you why whoever changed their vote is because ordinary people showed up and showed that there are going to be real consequences for that vote. That's what happened.
Yeah. So don't believe that what Andrew Lewis did yesterday was brave. What Andrew Lewis did yesterday is what Andrew Lewis does. He is a professional flip-flopper. He blows with the wind. And I'm going to give you an example of that coming up in a moment. But first, let me read some reactions. Ann Davison, the Seattle city attorney, put out a statement. I'll read part of it for you. She said, "I'm outraged that today some city council members chose to take no action against the soaring opioid epidemic in Seattle. What we've been doing is not working. Our buses, parks, and sidewalks are filled with individuals who need help getting into treatment. Seattle will now be the only municipality in the state of Washington where it is legal to use hard drugs in public. That means drug use on public transit and in our neighborhoods will continue unimpeded. Sadly, because of the obstruction of these council members, overdose deaths are likely to continue to climb." And the city attorney's right. I will say, though, I really truly believe that some of the opposition to the proposal that she put forth has nothing to do with its merits and has everything to do with the fact that Ann Davison is a Republican, with the fact that we have a Republican city attorney in a city where people thought that was almost impossible. And I'll tell you again, it's not just me saying that. It's not just me that has that belief. City Councilwoman Shama Sawant made it clear as she was talking about her opposition to this. She said that, and she alluded to the fact that this is really about Ann Davison being a Republican. Here's what City Councilwoman Shama Sawant said about the proposal.
I have zero confidence in how Ann Davison will use this power. Ann Davison joined the Republican Party after Trump was elected.
After Donald Trump was elected. So again, it's not about the actual policy proposal. It's about the fact that Ann Davison is a Republican. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, why does this matter? Why does this matter? Why does Seattle have to pass an ordinance when the state and state lawmakers in a special legislative session put a law on the books to make it a gross misdemeanor to possess illegal drugs? Can't they just enforce the state law? They can. They absolutely can enforce the state law. And Andrew Lewis said that when he was trying to excuse his vote and trying to appease people. He said, hey, everything's good, everything's fine, we don't need an ordinance. The Seattle Police Department can still continue to enforce this based on the state law.
The RCW is going to be in place. The authority of the Seattle Police is completely uninhibited, completely unhindered by whatever we do here today. The Seattle Police, and I want to be completely clear from this dais, the Seattle Police are fully empowered under the RCW to arrest people if they are publicly using and to arrest people for possession.
Now, in theory, that's true. But Andrew Lewis knows full well that in practice, it's not. Here's the problem. Right now, without a city ordinance, the Seattle Police Department could arrest a drug user or someone possessing drugs under the state law. But those cases would have to be referred to the King County Prosecutor's Office, not to Seattle Municipal Court. And here's the thing, and again, Andrew Lewis knows this. That's why what he just said was gaslighting. The King County Prosecutor has already said, we're not going to take those cases. We don't have the personnel to take those cases. The King County Prosecutor's Office already said a long time ago that she supported the city of Seattle passing an ordinance so they could take those cases. So sure, the Seattle Police Department could go out and they could make arrests for every single person using and possessing drugs. That person's going to go to jail. They're going to get right back out because no one is taking the case. Lisa Mannion, the King County prosecutor, put out a statement saying the PAO, this was a part of a letter she sent to the city council telling them this. They knew this. The PAO does not have the staff or resources necessary to take on a new body of misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor cases. Even if the PAO magically had the staff and resources necessary to take on a new body of work, we would focus those resources on felony prosecutions. The city attorney's office is better equipped to handle these cases immediately and with available and offered resources if the Seattle City Council approves the necessary ordinance. So again, Andrew Lewis can say, hey, it's okay though. It's okay that I'm a coward and change my vote at the last minute to help save my district downtown because the police department can still go out and arrest. That would be a waste of the police department's freaking time because no one that they arrest is going to face consequences, is going to get the help they need. I don't even know that they'd be booked into jail, frankly. So again, another example of gaslighting from Andrew Lewis to try to take the heat off of him in the moment. Ridiculous. The Downtown Seattle Association put out a statement. They said, and they represent the business interests downtown and basically the vitality of downtown. That's their goal. Seattle's drug crisis is a public health emergency that is worsening by the day and one that demands urgent action. At a critical time for the recovery of downtown, the use of dangerous drugs in our public spaces is a significant contributing factor to residents, employees, families, and visitors feeling unsafe exploring our city or returning to the office. And in fact, the DSA has a poll that they commissioned that's coming out on Thursday. The full results will come out Thursday, but they did say in that poll, 77% of voters they polled agreed with this statement. Seattle's hands-off approach to people using illegal drugs in public is contributing to rampant street crime and is making it much harder for downtown to recover. 77% of the people polled in Seattle voters agreed with that statement. 63% strongly agreed. So again, who is Andrew Lewis siding with? Now, I'll say this of the Downtown Seattle Association. They don't endorse candidates. They basically release a scorecard for candidates saying, hey, here's the score we give them related to issues important to downtown. If any business in downtown, or in Seattle for that matter, supports Andrew Lewis after this, I can't help you. I'm done. I'm done fighting for you. I'm done trying to be a voice for you because you will deserve every single thing you get. This is not the first time this man has done this. This is who he is. You know, he said this statement yesterday about how he has spent every waking hour in his time in the council fighting for the people of downtown. Here's what he said.
And I want to speak directly to the people who I know who are watching, who are constituents who I represent downtown, who are business owners, who are residents, who are rightly scared and concerned by the state of substance addiction that is in our streets. And I want to reach out because I have spent every waking hour of my time on this council dais and in service to the city to help downtown recover from that crisis.
Bullshit. Bullshit. And we have the receipts. Andrew, it's 2023. Everything you say, there's a video of it, there's a tweet of it. This is the guy who campaigned for his job in 2019 by promising to hire more police officers. Here he is.
We need to hire more police officers in the city. I see on a daily basis that there's parts of our city where we don't have the staffing numbers to have effective community policing strategies and deter the kinds of crimes of opportunity that are prolific.
He turned around 6 months later and pledged to defund SPD by 50%. That's who he is. He blows with the wind. He listens to whoever shows up at council chambers and screams the loudest. He has done this before. So for people downtown who would even consider, especially in the business community, voting for that man again, giving that man a dime of your money for his re-election campaign, what are you thinking? And sure, you might look at Olga Sagan, for instance, and say, well, I'm not, sure she's not battle tested. I don't know where she's going to stand on these issues. You already know where Andrew Lewis stands. He stands with the loudest voice in the room. He flip-flopped on police funding. He flip-flopped on something as important as criminalizing hard drugs at a time when downtown Seattle is overrun by hard drug users. It shouldn't even be a thought, not even a fleeting consideration to continue to support that man's seat on the Seattle City Council for the love of God. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit later on in the show, actually to close the show today in our Sanity Check, about Tammy Morales' claims of a war on drugs, resurrecting a war on drugs. It's fear-mongering. It's not in line with reality. It's gaslighting. It's all of the above. But all I can say, look, the Seattle City Council is going to do what the Seattle City Council does, make bad decisions. They've done that for a long time. Thankfully, several of the people who voted against this common sense piece of legislation have already decided not to run again. Thank God. But several of them are running again. And I firmly believe that if the Seattle electorate is serious about turning the city around, it cannot give one incumbent their job back. Not one incumbent, because they've already shown you what they do. And they gave you a prime example of that last night. Okay, coming up next, we talked on the show yesterday about this effort of the business community to clean up downtown Seattle ahead of the MLB All-Star Game. Joining us is my friend Tim Gatos, who is actually behind that effort. And so he and I are going to talk about it. But first, we've been talking about my friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. Awesome real estate agent, been doing it for a long time in our area. He and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure that your listing, A, gets the most possible eyeballs. They're going to list it locally, they're going to list it internationally, and also that you're going through the checklist to do everything you can to make sure you get top dollar with the fewest possible contingencies. And Wes Jones told me that he does see, as crazy as the market has been all over the place, he does see a window of opportunity.
There's some pent-up buyer demand because buyers really went on strike starting last August and nothing happened. I should say very little happened the rest of the year. And it feels like we're getting back to your traditional seasonal real estate periods where a lot of home sales happen in the spring. So pent-up buyer demand, not a whole lot of options for buyers to purchase home, means that it's a great time to sell a home if you have to do something.
So if you're in the market to sell your home, why not sell it with our friend Wes Jones? Go to sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Okay, we talked about this on the show yesterday. I was just all at Twitter, and now it's like national news. And look, MLB All-Star Game is coming up. We're talking about the depths of despair Seattle's in. Forgive me if I have some concerns about our ability to play host to a bunch of people across the country for a baseball game and to be able to do it safely. I just am very worried about it. And I had said, I thought what'll probably happen is the city will go in there 5 days before, clean up the whole thing, bunch of cops in the area. It'll look nice for the baseball game, and then they'll all pull out, and then it'll go back to looking like hell. And I saw, in fact, my friend Tim Gato sent me this. It was an invitation for people to come and to clean up the tourist areas in down by Soto. Community cleanup for June 23rd, 9 to 12 p.m., starting at T-Mobile Park. And it's being put on in part by Together Washington. What I didn't realize when I was being so critical of it initially is that my friend Tim Gatos and Together Washington are actually organizing this thing. And so he told me over the phone, after I was raising hell about it on the show, like, hey, this isn't just about, one day of cleanup. This is part of a concerted effort that we're engaged in to try to, encourage civic engagement and improve Seattle over the long term. And so I invited Tim Gatos on to talk about this event, but also what the business community and what concerned citizens are trying to do to turn the city around themselves, because apparently City Hall can't be trusted to. Tim Gatos, welcome to Undivided.
Good to be here, Brandi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I have to have you because I crapped on your dreams the other day. So I'm going to make up for that in a second. But first, in all seriousness, I've got to ask you about the vote in the city council yesterday. As someone who cares a lot about the success or failure of downtown Seattle, I imagine you're not too pleased.
I think it's unfortunate. I mean, I think... I think we've certainly seen what's happening, on our city streets, particularly in downtown Seattle. I mean, people, dying, ODing. I mean, it's really, I walk the streets of downtown every day, and it's discouraging, and it's harmful to people who are out there and don't have the ability to, get better, get right, get treatment, and get the things they need. So I think it's unfortunate, without a doubt. So I think Councilmember Lewis was vacillating on his decision, is probably to put it nicely. And I think he had mentioned he was going to be a yes vote, and so he in turn switched that out. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the days, weeks, months to come with his reelection coming up in November.
When I think of Councilman Andrew Lewis, and I think that's the most important council seat, frankly, is the one representing downtown. When I think of him campaigning in 2019, saying, oh, our officers are great, we need more officers, turns around 6 months later, pledges to defund. And I feel like it's just whatever way the wind blows. And then we saw this happen yesterday. Do you think that he is the person who should be representing downtown Seattle?
Well, I think we're seeing some really good candidates right now pop in. So I think that's going to be really, really important to see folks come in like Olga and others who have a passion for small businesses, who have a passion for downtown Seattle. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, I think certainly with this vote yesterday, I think his constituents in downtown Seattle are going to be looking very intently at if he's the right person. I think Chris Daniels mentioned in a tweet yesterday that, Andrew has been kind of working the downtown cocktail circuit, I think he put it. And now that probably might give that a lot of people pause about if he really is the right council member for that district.
Well, you're being nice. I mean, if that doesn't give them pause and they reelect him, I honestly think I don't feel bad for downtown anymore. I just don't know at this point how you could support someone who has flip-flopped so many times and in such a destructive way. And I know I'm not going to put my opinion on you, but if that doesn't give them more than pause, I don't know if I can help them anymore. Let's talk about our little tweet back or our text back and forth the other day. So you send me this announcement about this effort to bring volunteers down to, SoDo, the downtown core, to clean it up, essentially, ahead of the MLB All-Star Game. And I responded to it. I was like, oh, my God. And I sent it out. And I was just like, I can't believe this is necessary. It turns out it's your event. I'm sorry. So first, what is the event? What's the purpose of the event, in your estimation?
Yeah, I mean, really, the big idea, and I don't want to, just bore you with all these details, but let me broach it. There's a bigger effort that's underway. It's a civic pride effort. We all know that it's been a tough few years for those of us that have been in this region a long time. It's been a tough few years with the pandemic and all these other things that are happening. And we are people who believe in this city. We believe in this region. If you've been here a long time, they're evangelists for Seattle. Like, this is the best place that exists. And it is, it's an incredible place. And with what's coming up down the road, there are some unbelievable projects, events, some of the biggest in the history of the region. And so the Seattle Chamber and Rachel Smith is actually, she hatched this idea, and it's going to come out here later this year about tying a common thread through all of these significant projects and events that are happening in our region so that we can build community around these. I mean, there's everything from, of course, the All-Star Game to the World Cup to the waterfront park opening, the opening of the expansion of the aquarium, all the Link light rail extensions. And we have a list of about 25 significant events and projects that over the next 5 or 6 years are going to be opening that will really be, when we look back on this time, we'll think back to, Seattle in the 60s and what was called forward thrust back then is going to be called upward together. And maybe we can come back and talk about this more later. But really the whole concept of this is a way to build community and use the weight of all of these significant projects and events to help build community, build the civic pride that we have. Yeah, we have a lot of challenges, no question about it. But how can we see what's happening and know that down the road we are going to build a better future for this region and for the city? So with this event, this was an opportunity to, bring a lot of partners and neighborhoods together, along with the Mariners, along with the city. The Herald administration has been great to work with on this, and to say, hey, it's not the way that we want it to look. Let's get it better. Let's work together, but let's also build community around it and get people excited for this exciting week that's coming here in the beginning of July.
Yeah, and for the record, I do not blame anyone in the business community, especially, given how important that time is going to be for them economically. I don't blame them for wanting to do this. And I think it's a noble thing, for volunteers to go down and try to, as they said in here, create pristine and welcoming spaces for both residents and visitors alike. I think my disappointment in it is just that it's necessary, that we have to bring in volunteers for 3 days to try to help, or for 3 hours to try to help beautify the city before cameras get here for the MLB All-Star Game. Do you understand the frustration I have with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone is like, oh man, everything is perfect and great. It's the way it should be. But I would say that this is something that I think would happen even if things were, looked better. I think this is something that would still that we would do. I mean, I've been doing green and cleans for almost 20 years in Seattle. These kind of efforts, and I guess and I lived in Belltown for a number of years. Did these in Belltown and Pioneer Square, and hey, 20 years ago, things didn't look that great back then either. I mean, I can just remember in my mind's eye that the issues and the problems that we had. So we've had problems, we've had issues. Certainly, they've been exacerbated the last few years with the pandemic and the downtown Seattle shutting down. But I will say, man, I'm very grateful for Mayor Harrell and that he won that election.
Oh gosh.
And that he's doing the job that he's doing. They've been really great to work with, and I think they are the way that the trajectory that we're on right now is a great trajectory, and quite frankly, a much better one than it would have been otherwise.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine a Mayor Lorena Gonzalez. I mean, the city's not great right now, but I can't even imagine where we would be at under her leadership. One of my fears about this, because I had said, I think a month ago, that I know exactly what's going to happen before the MLB All-Star Game. The city will come in, there'll be a bunch of cops, they'll clear it out so it's palatable for people who are visiting, and then a few days later it'll go back to normal. Because I've seen it. I've done interviews with mayors downtown where I had been down there and it was a disaster, and then I get down there and the whole thing's cleaned up, and I'm like, they cleaned this up because we were coming down to do a TV interview. And so I guess with this cleanup in particular, how can we make sure that it doesn't just immediately go back to how it was after the MLB All-Star Game? Or is it probably going to go back to how it was?
No, I mean, part of the effort that we're a part of, the Seattle Chamber, Together Washington, and others are helping to put together is to create sustainable efforts that continue to bring and tie a common thread through these events and projects that are happening. I mean, that really is kind of the big idea, is to tie this common thread through these things so that they're not isolated. So it's not just like, because there was no thought of oh man, let's just hurry up and get it ready for the All-Star Game, and then it's just going to go back to what it was. How can we create a sustainable opportunities to see our city the way I think we all wanted to see it? And so what's happening, Brandi, with this is that already, and we did this for the convention center as well. We held a cleanup around the convention center before that opened in January. And what it does is it creates momentum and inspiration, and people want to get more involved. So already I'm here. I just heard from Amazon yesterday. They said at least one of their divisions said, hey, we can't do the 23rd, but we've got 300 people that want to go do a volunteer day in July after the All-Star Game. Is that possible? It's absolutely yes. Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing that it's kind of building on itself, that as people are coming back to the office in downtown, Nordstrom's just reached out to me yesterday. They want to bring 500 people out to serve at this day on the 23rd, and then figure out ways to do it regularly. That's happening because of that. People are getting, seeing others come out and they're inspired to do it. And you can create these opportunities to sustain and give people an opportunity to love and serve their city, which I think is pretty cool.
I think it is too. And I hope though that civic engagement and that desire to, go down there and what they see as they're doing it will inspire them come November, to make a change in the city and to say, hey, it's great if we want to go do these things, but we also need city leadership that wants our city to be just as beautiful as we want it to be. And I don't think that that's what we have on the city council right now, with just a couple exceptions. I'm curious your thoughts on this. I have said that I don't think the city should have put its name in the running for the All-Star Game or for the World Cup in the state it's in? Because my concern is if tourists come here and have a bad experience, that can have ripple effects that are further detrimental to the city's long-term success. Do you agree with that, or do you think we need events like this to be a catalyst for cleanups and for change?
It's a great event. I mean, I have every belief that this is the Mariners are doing a fantastic job. I mean, they're a first-class organization. They got great people. I think it's going to be run very well. And I think that this is going to be a catalyst, without a doubt, for the rest of the summer, because we know that it's going to, the summer is going to already, and I don't know if you've seen it, Brandi, it is the vibrancy right now. I haven't seen a vibrancy like this probably in 3 years, since before the pandemic on the streets, with, of course, it's cruise season. You're getting a lot of tourists in, but there is a ton of vibrancy. I went out to eat the other night on a Monday night in downtown Seattle, Brandi. I had to wait an hour for a table at a restaurant on a Monday night.
Well, it helps that Amazon made its workers come back to the office.
On a Monday night.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and that's what you need. You need people down there who aren't there specifically to sell drugs, buy drugs, commit crimes, and all of that. You need a vibrancy of people working, living, and visiting, and we need them to be safe. Tim, let's end with this. And Nicole, I'm going to have you check my calendar for June 23rd, because I told Tim after I lost my mind about this being necessary that I'll come down and clean graffiti with a toothbrush to make amends if I don't have anything on the 23rd. But how can people volunteer if they would like to volunteer?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It would be great to have folks come out. And Brandi, I cannot wait to see you out there on the 23rd. TogetherWashington.com. Go to TogetherWashington.com, and there's a link right on the very front page. It says T-Mobile Park Community Cleanup. Just click the link, and super easy to register. And there's going to be a lot of fun jobs and opportunities. We're going to meet 9 a.m. on June 23rd at the Mariners Parking Plaza, which is right there at T-Mobile Park. We'll have coffee and pastries. Our friend Angela Dunleavy is going to be doing some coffee and pastries for us. And then we'll have some former Mariners and Sounders there, which will be great. And just do a little community celebration, and then everybody will go off into different neighborhoods. We've got block captains who are going to be helping out, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So TogetherWashington.com, sign up, come out on June 23rd.
All right, what's the verdict on my schedule, Nicole?
You're open.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
We'll see you there, Brandi.
Okay, all right, I'll come. Hey, as much as I have been hard on Seattle, I want it to succeed. I want it to thrive, and bless you and everybody else who is trying to do what, frankly, your tax dollars and city government should already be doing. But I give you a lot of credit for how much you love the city. You're critical of it, but I think being critical of it right now does show the city love, and that's what we need. So, Tim Gatos, we really appreciate your time, and I guess I'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you on the 23rd.
Okay. And Tim, by the way, also hosts a radio show in town. You can find it wherever you get your podcast if that's easier. It's called Live from Seattle with Tim Gatos. He's awesome, and he's one of our people. I mean, he is critical of what's going on in the city. You know, obviously, he wants to help in whatever way he can. He's very entrenched in the community groups, et cetera. But his show is really good, so give it a listen. Live from Seattle with Tim Gatos. And since I volunteered for this, you know that means you have to come too, and you, Nicole. Oh, you wanted time to put your sunglasses on?
I'm busy.
You're busy on the 23rd?
I really am.
I don't believe you.
I really am.
What are you doing on the 23rd?
So on the 22nd, I'm taking my cousin's kids to a Great Wolf Lodge. So I'll be there all day.
Does anybody believe Nicole?
And then
See, now I got to yell at you again to get your mic closer to your face.
Sorry. It's because I'm so focused on the sunglasses.
I know. She doesn't want to show... You guys tell me, does Nicole have to wear sunglasses?
Well, it's just gross. I don't want to make people look at it.
At your black eye?
Yeah, there you go.
It's getting better, though. It is
getting
definitely
better, but
getting
I still
better.
have this droopy cheek thing going on.
That's still a little puffed up. All right, so you'll be there on the 23rd.
No.
Maybe we'll do another volunteer thing.
Also, you know what bothers me. It bothers me
too, that we have to go and clean it up.
I don't even live there. And I know you're doing it as a favor to Tim, but I don't know. It just bothers me. I don't want to do that city council that you've been talking about and railing on. I don't want to do them any favors by making it look better for them.
I agree. Listen, I agree. I get it. But it's like, I do feel for the businesses. I do feel for the businesses who are like, wow, we're going to actually have tourists in town. There's an opportunity to make money for people to be coming into our shops.
Right.
And so if we clean it up a little bit and we can do better, my heart always goes out to the small businesses that just get the middle finger from the city of Seattle.
Yes, although they too, well, some of them don't live there, but some of them do. And they need to, do what Olga is doing and try to make a difference.
Hey, like I said earlier, if they in November give Andrew Lewis his job back, I'm done. I have been a fierce advocate for downtown businesses for years, going back to my Fox 13 days on my show. If they vote Andrew Lewis back in, freaking done.
I know.
Done. I won't be an advocate for you anymore, even though some of them will have tried. But I mean, the 7th district is downtown. That is downtown. If you want to live in that with him,
right,
given what he's done, I just don't think I can advocate for you anymore.
Yeah, I just think think that way for the whole city, all the districts. I just think that they've continued to vote these people in that make no secret about not wanting to fix things.
Right.
So
Tammy
it's
Morales,
very frustrating.
Tammy Morales in the 2nd. I mean, a district most impacted by crime.
Right.
I'm going to talk more about Tammy Morales to close the show. Okay. We're going to continue on this theme, though. And again, what happens in Seattle impacts our entire state negatively. We have to have a turnaround in Seattle. It's the economic engine of our entire state. That's why we are focusing on it so much today. And I am going to, well, let's just do it now, and I'll get to the national stuff later. Let's get to our segment, Unbelievable. I share Nicole's sentiment, and I'm sure the sentiment of a lot of you, that it's unbelievable that citizens have to volunteer to clean up the city, to clean up homeless encampments. We did a volunteer activity last month with unDivided's Charity of the Year, We Heart Seattle. This is a group of citizens that got so tired of looking at the trash in the parks that their tax money is supposed to be paying to clean up, that they started a whole organization, Andrea Suarez, to go clean up these encampments, to beautify parks. And we were at this event last month, and I know a lot of you were there as well, doing the hard work, cleaning up this defunct homeless encampment in a beautiful green belt on Queen Anne Hill. And I said at the time after I did it, we did it begrudgingly. You shouldn't have to do it. That homeless encampment never should have been allowed to fester for so long that it took 100 people 3 hours to clean it up. Just like I don't believe that the business community and that citizens should have to volunteer on June 23rd to beautify downtown Seattle ahead of the MLB All-Star Game, to clean up the public parks and the areas in the city that are supposed to be nice for everyone to enjoy year-round. I think it's unbelievable. And I mentioned yesterday that we do this today. It's also absurd considering how much money you give the government to do this stuff. How much money Seattle and King County voters have voted to tax themselves to do this exact kind of work. Nicole went and looked at all the money and the revenue that has been approved for this. So for instance, in August of 2019, King County voters approved a measure to renew a property tax levy to support parks, trails, and other open spaces in King County. It's for 2020 through 2025. We're in the middle of this right now. And it's estimated that the tax is going to generate $810 million over 6 years, which costs about $7.60 per month for the owner of a home with an assessed property value of $500,000. This is for all King County. If your home, and I find it hard to believe that there's a lot of homes valued under $500,000 in King County, but you're paying for this every single month. And Nicole, if you can bring that back up, this also impacts Seattle. For instance, a chunk of this is for Woodland Park Zoo, which how many homeless encampments have been cleaned up out of the Woodland Park area? A big chunk of it is for parks and trails in cities and towns. So again, this isn't just unincorporated parts of King County, $810 million. And then specific to the city of Seattle, there was also more recently an effort. Seattle doubled its parks levy to add rangers and services. Cost, if you have a median valued home, so that's around $860,000 in Seattle. The first budget cycle, it was about $150 a year, and that is continuing to go up. Now it'll be about $342 a year in 2023. and then $450 a year in 2028 that you're paying the government to do something they're not freaking doing. $810 million in King County, $450 a year for your household in 2028. Yet you have organizations like We Heart Seattle, organizations like Better Together, that still have to round up volunteers to clean truckloads of trash out of green belts, out of homeless encampments in city parks. It's unbelievable. And again, it all goes back to they're going to continue to do it. They're going to continue to take your money as long as you're willing to give it to them and then not do jack with it. And then you're going to be asked, Mayor of Seattle, oh, 1 day of service. Let's go beautify the city. That's what the freaking tax money is for. Now, I'm fine if you want us to volunteer to go clean up the city, then give the tax money back. Then end the levy. Because you're not doing what you need to be doing. That amount of money, $810 million for the county, $450 from the average household in Seattle, every single park and green space in the Seattle better be freaking pristine. I should be able to lick the sidewalk. Well, I don't know if I'd actually do that. There sure as hell shouldn't be used needles laying everywhere. There shouldn't be homeless tents in public parks. There shouldn't be 10 years worth of trash and filth in a greenbelt on Queen Anne Hill for that amount of money. So yeah, I share your frustration that it's unbelievable that citizens need to pay the tax revenue, but also go volunteer to clean up. Freaking unreal. Unbelievable. Okay, coming up next, we'll fit in, we got time. We'll fit in a quick national story because I really want to hear your thoughts on it. But first, I've been talking about First Mark Insurance. Best thing Mike and I have done, we're getting married, so we have, our various insurance. We needed to bundle that together. I'd heard my friend Dory talk about the First Mark Challenge for years on Cairo Radio. So when they said, hey, we want to be a sponsor on your show, Mike and I went through the First Mark Challenge, that entire process, and it was so eye-opening to us. In fact, Dave Taylor, the CEO of First Mark, came in, and I gave him permission to carte blanche to talk about how woefully underinsured Mike and I were. Would you say our primary issue is we were undercovered?
I would. Yeah.
And what's the risk for someone of being undercovered?
Yeah, so I think it's real common for us to see on a liability level that folks don't have enough coverage. Because in the state of Washington, there's the state minimum limits of coverage that the state says, hey, if you have these limits, you're legal. And I think that can be confused with legal equals adequately covered, and that's not the case. So the risk is if you get in an auto accident, and you don't have enough coverage, and let me clarify, you get in an auto accident that's your fault, and you don't have enough coverage, then they can come after you personally for any additional amounts over and above your coverage limit. And that means things like your retirement plan, or come after your equity in your home, or garnish your wages. So it's a big thing. And like with you and Mike, I just think most people haven't had someone take the time to explain it to them in terms they can understand, and show them how inexpensive it is to actually get the correct coverage.
Yeah, it was a really eye-opening experience, and I recommend you do it. If you work hard for what you have, don't leave it vulnerable, and that terrified me after we got done with the First Mark Challenge. I was like, So now we have much better insurance. We pay about the same price. It's a no-brainer, and you don't pay First Mark anything. So take the First Mark Challenge like Mike and I did, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. Okay, let's get a quick national story in. We were going to talk about it yesterday, but we didn't. We skipped past it, and so I want to talk about it today because I really am curious. The whole debt ceiling debacle went down, and there was a lot of negotiating, which you have to negotiate when you're in divided government. Republicans were never going to get everything they wanted. Democrats and the president were never going to get anything they wanted. One of the things they negotiated over was work requirements for SNAP benefits, so food stamps. And there are already and have been, some work requirements in place to say, hey, if you're able-bodied of a certain age, you need to show that you're actively looking for employment, taking, classes to further your abilities to be able to be better employable, et cetera. So they agreed to do a couple things, and Democrats are unhappy about this, some Democrats, and I just don't understand why. It's so common sense to me. So under this new debt ceiling deal, by 2025, and this is the article from the Associated Press, by 2025, new requirements will apply to able-bodied adults from age 49 to 54 if they don't have dependents, okay? So they will be required, if they want to get these benefits, to work or attend training programs for at least 80 hours a month if they want to receive more than 3 months of SNAP benefits within a 3-year period. So again, we're talking able-bodied 49 to 54-year-olds with no dependents. So they don't have any kids with mouths to feed. What's controversial about requiring them to prove that they're either working or they're attending training programs? 49 to 54, if you're able-bodied, you're within the range of, you should be working in this country. That doesn't make any sense. And if you prove you're working, you're still a little short to get food, etc., then the government is going to step in. And in exchange for that, by the way, Democrats were able to expand overall SNAP benefits. For instance, for veterans, for individuals who are homeless or facing housing instability, and for kids who are aging out of foster care. So overall, it sounds like more people are going to be eligible for SNAP benefits. All you're doing is adding a requirement to expand the age requirement where you have to show proof of work to 49 to 54. Help me understand, if you're a Democrat who doesn't oppose that, like, I don't want anyone to go hungry, but you're talking about able-bodied 49 to 54-year-olds with no dependents. And again, I'm not going to argue back against loosening requirements for veterans who have served our country, for people who are, on the cusp of homelessness, for kids who have been in foster care as children and are aging out. Like, that seems common sense to me. But help me understand why it would be even the slightest bit controversial if you're giving tax money to someone to afford food and to help make up for a gap, why it would be controversial to make sure that that person is also actively working or actively taking training programs. I just don't get it. Okay, eastsideweightlosclinic.com, eastsideweightlosclinic.com. I've been talking a lot about the program. I've lost more than 35 pounds. In fact, I told Nicole, I've never worn this shirt before, and I've had it for several years. I bought it a few years ago, and I think it didn't fit me at the time. I was like, it got shipped in, and I was like, it's too small. And it was one of those things where I forgot to return it, and then it was just in my closet. And I saw it today. I was like, I wonder if that fits.
Good thing you kept it.
Good thing I kept it. Had a tag on this morning. Here I am, down more than 35 pounds. And I have only great things to say about the program. You get to eat real food. You don't have to count calories. There's no strenuous workout routine. And it trains you for how to keep the weight off. I haven't gained any of the weight back that I lost. So check out eastsideweightlosclinic.com. That's eastsideweightlosclinic.com. Schedule a free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan, who's awesome. You will love him. And you could be looking and feeling better before summer. Again, what's the downside, man? Okay, let's get to your comments from the show today. Bill Biz with a super chat. Wow, I'm still not in the lingo. What are they called again? A super comment? Okay, Daryl's going to be like, you guys are old. He says, we need more adults on the city council. And that is it. Like, when I look at Andrew Lewis, first of all, physically speaking, he looks very young, but he just looks out of place and just wimpy. Does that mean whatever?
No, I agree.
Okay, Leah said, I've given up on Seattle. I can't care more than the people who live there and vote these politicians in. Instead, I'm trying to focus on my family and the one-to-one people I can influence. Yeah, like, it's easier to talk to people one-on-one and to say, hey, here's what's going on. I feel bad for the people in Seattle who don't vote for this and are just overruled, but then you get to decide, like, is it time for me to leave and move somewhere else? Christina says, I don't want to put drug users in jail, but they are willing to kill them by allowing this to continue. That makes sense. Seattle needs to vote better. Tiffany says, I worked in a criminal justice job not too long ago. It is not that hard for those with felonies or any criminal record to find a job in the state. That's very true. That's a very good point. I worked with many that made a significant amount more than I did. The ones that were successful wanted to change and had their own determination to succeed. Guess what? That means they had to get off drugs and had to be incarcerated and put in that uncomfortable situation to see the light of day. Scott says, so sick of it. Lawlessness, being rewarded, no repercussions for actions that endanger others, stealing, looting, public drug use, abusive behaviors toward people just trying to go to Pike Place, the courthouse, a Mariners game. Done with Seattle. Lieutenant Dan says, damn, Brandi, really leaning into being black-pilled. I don't blame. What's black-pilled? You Google. I know what red-pilled is, and I got red-pilled somewhere around the summer of 2020. Will you Google black-pilled?
Okay, on it.
Okay, on it. I don't know what that is. I don't blame you, to be honest. Leadership is a joke, and it's hard to not feel cynical. Kyle says, I love Tim's attitude, referring to our friend Tim Gatos, who is volunteering this, who is organizing this volunteer opportunity to clean up downtown ahead of the big game. I love Tim's attitude, but this is like cleaning up the house while your kid's actively trashing it. It's valiant, necessary work, but eventually you've got to stop the trashing. Did you figure it out?
Well, possibly. When you believe there is no way out of a problem.
Black-pilled.
Yeah.
Black to cause, nihilistic philosophy. Oh, okay. Maybe I am a little bit. I believe there's a way out at the ballot box. And I don't think it's overnight. I think it takes electing people like Sarah Nelson to the city council. That was a good choice. Peterson, why can't I think of his first name? The Councilman Peterson, who was a good choice. I think that Bruce Harrell was a much better choice than the alternative, Lorena Gonzalez, Alex Peterson, sorry. Wow, that just totally. Yep. I think Olga Sagan, as a small business owner, would be a great choice to replace Andrew Lewis. Why does he even do it on the council in the first place? I think it can be changed incrementally. And then getting, Shama Sawant not running for election, voting Tammy Morales out would be great. So I'm not nihilistic about it. I think that there's a path out of this, but it takes courage and it takes an electorate that wants to get out of it. And maybe they don't. Maybe they agree. I don't know. I don't think so because, again, that Downtown Seattle Association survey that said like 77% of voters think the hands-off approach to substance abuse is contributing to the destruction of the city. And then I'm like, well, where are you guys come voting time? So I don't know. Black-pilled, that's new for me though. Okay. Patricia said, we need a financial audit of the city of Seattle. So overdue. Why is this not being done? At least 10 years of some huge revenues collected and they still cannot balance a budget or make a difference with it. If we were living in a beautiful, pristine, safe, amazing city and paying that much in taxes, I think that's much more palatable. But when you're throwing all that money at the government willingly, because you approve the taxes, and then it looks like crap, it's like, well, what is that money for? Guy said, thanks for reminding me why I won't spend money in King County or visit that dumpster fire. Hey, not all King County is as bad as Seattle. I live in East King County, and I love it, okay? For now, let's see. Let's get a couple more in. Andrew says the druggies do have plenty of resources. They don't want them. They're exactly where they want to be, near the drugs with no resistance. And their mind is putting them there. They don't, if you were clear of mind and thought, you wouldn't want to be there. But the perpetual cycle of being on drugs leaves you in a mental place where you can't agree to services. And that's why some people argue a couple nights in jail, it might suck for them really bad. But if it saves their life, how can you be opposed to that? Bob says the war on drugs wasn't perfect, but when police departments had drug units 20 plus years ago, they were a hell of a lot better than they are today. Perfect? No. Failure? Hell no. And let's actually, that's a good segue to get to our closing sanity check for today. I want to revisit the comment that Councilwoman Tammy Morales, who again is up for re-election, I urge you to keep that in mind, made yesterday when she voted against a plan to ensure that drugs remained criminalized in the city of Seattle.
This bill is not intended to solve substance use disorder. It is not intended to provide treatment to people. It is not intended, even if encouraged, to support pretrial diversion. It is not intended to mitigate the racial disproportionality that always comes when arresting people is made easier. The sole intent then is to put poor people in jail, most of whom will be Black and brown, and then let them out and ensure that they have a record that follows them forever and makes it harder to get a job or get housing. I still hear neighbors talking in South Seattle about the trauma caused by the Weed and Seed program, another effort to target users and round them up, especially in communities of color. Let's be very clear that what hangs in the balance today is whether we will vote to put Black and brown people in jail.
What hangs in the balance today is whether we will vote to put Black and brown people in jail. If she really believes that, then she believes that the only Black and brown people who are hurting right now are those who are addicted to drugs. And I think that's actually kind of a racist sentiment, Councilwoman. You aren't considering the Black and brown business owners who are hurt by all of this. You are not considering the Black and brown residents of the city who don't feel safe over all of this. If I'm to believe you, then your only care and concern are Black and brown residents who are actively engaged in substance abuse. And you're forgetting about everyone else, or you're assuming that the only Black and brown residents we have in the city are those who are addicted to drugs, which is kind of odd. The Councilwoman talks about the fact that she believes this ordinance would have resurrected the failed war on drugs. And I'm not a fan of the war on drugs as someone with libertarian tendencies. But Seattle, as long as I've lived here, 13 years, has never been a city engaged in the war on drugs. Ever. It has never been a city, as long as I've lived here, that has actively sought to put drug users in jail. Certainly not to put them in prison. As a percentage of the prison population in Washington state, the amount that are there for only drug-related crimes is about 2%. We don't put people in prison in this state for simply being drug addicts. We don't do it. That's a fact. And we don't put people in our jails simply for being drug addicts. We haven't as long as I've lived here. So to suggest that what this ordinance was trying to accomplish is a resurrection of the war on drugs is deeply dishonest. It's gaslighting. It's a lie. What we do need a war on is addiction. And if you don't believe so, Councilwoman, then you support people dying on our streets. We need a war on the addiction that is leading to an increase in crime. We need a war on the addiction that is stopping tourists from visiting what was once a beautiful city. We need a war on addiction that is leading to a lower quality of life for those who live, work, and visit downtown Seattle. So we do need a war, not on drugs, but on addiction. And to suggest that passing an ordinance that makes drug use and drug possession in public a crime is the exact same thing as the war on drugs in this country is absurd. When we were putting people in prison, in federal prison, for abusing substances, no one is saying that we need to bring that back, not even close. Every conversation that I have heard on this issue has been about a balance between accountability and compassion. They weren't having those conversations during the war on drugs in this country. They weren't talking about arresting people as a way to get them better, as a way to get them into treatment, as a way to get them back on their feet. We are a much more compassionate and understanding society today than we were during the war on drugs. But if you, Councilwoman, don't support a war on addiction, which is what we truly need, then you have no place in a position of leadership in a city where people are dying at record numbers. And I will say it, you need to lose your job. And the people in your district, the 2nd District in Seattle, need to take that job away from you. And they need to give it to someone who has an ounce of sanity and who actually cares whether the people living on our streets survive. And that has been it for today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I think for a lot of us who don't live in Seattle, we can only hope and pray that voters in Seattle do what needs to be done and turn the city around, and thus, I think, stop some of the issues that are spilling out of Seattle into other areas that just feel helpless to do anything about it. If you'd like to become a subscriber to the show, please do so. Help support our mission and our movement to give common sense a comeback. You can do it for as little as $5 a month at patreon.com, or undividedpod.com. That was the old website. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. I will see you back on the live show tomorrow.